Hello, my name's Max Davey. I'm a paediatrician, dad, gamer, all-round idiot, and I, up until recently, ran a YouTube channel called Games for Families, which has been more or less dormant. But I've been inspired by recent events to kind of spark it up, mainly by my friend Serena Haywood. So I'm recording this on the 14th of March. We're just really in the UK and I think across the world kind of absorbing the fact that life is going to be rather restricted in the next few weeks. Got Easter holidays coming up, lots of events being cancelled, and lots of people being self-isolated because they've got symptoms which may or may not be related to the coronavirus. We have 2 people self-isolating in our family, and so we're managing that. It's day 2. It's going to be boring. So actually, and that seems like a sort of trivial thing to think about in the current context, but actually families being cooped up in their own houses can be very difficult. I work generally in emotional and behavioural difficulties within paediatrics, and that is a very difficult situation for people to be in. So Serena said, well, can you put something together? And I thought, well, a video would be good because something I've done before quite a few times, just to talk about play and talk about games and things that you can do. So there's a couple of ways that I didn't want this to go, and I just want to quickly talk about those. First, I don't want to do a video which is, here's why you should keep your children off screens if they happen to be off school for a week because they're self-isolating, because I don't think that there's anything wrong with screen-based activities in and of themselves. I was responsible for the Royal College of Paediatrics screen time guidance, which came out a year ago, and we really didn't find any direct harm from screen-based activities. So my youngest has just been playing Spider-Man. He's having a wonderful time. The only reason I restrict that is that I want him to do other stuff. I want to talk to him. I want to interact with him. So I want to frame this as a positive thing, and rather than let's find a way to keep the kids busy. Let's take opportunity to interact with them. Let's take opportunities for them to interact with each other. If you have to be, by necessity in the same place, make the best of it. And the second thing I want to do is not just you do the typical board game media thing of, okay, here's a pile of games that you can spend upwards of, 20 or 30 pounds each, and they will solve your problem. They all require considerable investment in terms of learning rules, and they're all require investment in terms of money as well. So I want to start in terms of what I would suggest with something which you could either buy something or you could just look it up, which is this book, The Floor is Lava by Ivan Brett. You can see it's well thumbed and has got little post-its where we put games that we particularly like. Do have a look at this book at Ivan's website, but also if you just want to sample the kind of games, these are basically folk games. I don't think Ivan would claim to have invented them all, although he's definitely been very inventive within this book. But if you want to just try the style of games, just look up, and I'll put a link in the description of this video on YouTube. 1,000 blank white cards. It's phenomenal fun, and literally you just need some cards and some pencils and some people. So don't rush out to kind of go online and immediately start buying games. If this suits you better, there's certainly quite a lot in that book, and 1,000 blank white cards will keep you busy for really quite some time. If, however, you do want to buy something, I, as people who know me will know, have a bit of a game collecting habit, which I am more or less on top of now, but I wanted to show you a few things from my collection. What I've done is thought about things that are good at lots of different counts, are entertaining for children and adults, and are relatively cheap. I'm not going to show you sort of big things with lots of figures, because this video is pitched at people who maybe don't have a game habit in the same way that I do. So I'm going to start with an extremely mean game, which called Skull King. Now you can play this. It's essentially a kind of form of whist. It's kind of contract whist, but it's got a lovely pirate theme. It's really fun. You have to go "arr" a lot and kind of you know, really pirate up and ham it up if you want to. And it's really super fun. As you can see, it's only a little box. This next game, again, you could mock up with particularly beer mats. If you get a load of beer mats, you could mock this up very, very quickly. It's essentially you have a hand of start off with 4 cards, 5 cards, one of which is a skull, the rest of which are roses. It's called Skull and Roses. It's a very old game, but this is just a lovely production of it. You can see how much we used it. It's completely wrecked. And you are sort of basically bluffing and betting. So it's a phenomenal, lovely game, and it happens obviously to have quite a similar name, so just don't get them confused. They will do you very nicely. As basics. This is a game that keeps coming back. It's not my favourite to play with people who are experienced gamers, but Diamant is a really fun game that lots of people like. You can see here from 2 to 8 players, so whatever group you've got, it works. It's a push your luck game. You have to kind of see how far you can go into the dungeons and whatever, those catacombs, and see if you can get enough treasure without being caught by the traps or the spiders or the snakes or whatever. Pretty basic, everyone can play it and everyone enjoys it. The worst reaction you'll get is, it's all right. And you'll usually get that from seasoned gamers who are kind of a bit snobby. Something that even seasoned gamers enjoy and everyone else seems to also enjoy. This is at the upper end of, in terms of expense, what I would suggest for people who aren't necessarily gamers, but it is so good. It's so fun. It's got that, it's called Bargain Quest, obviously. It's, you're not playing, it's got that kind of fantasy feel of adventurers and mages and wizards and kind of that things, but you're not the adventurers. You are the shopkeepers who are selling them the equipment. And you're attracting them to your shop and you're trying to sell them things and sometimes cheat them out of things and sell them stuff that's rubbish, and then sending them off to adventure and see if they die horrible death or if they actually succeed, in which case you get victory points. But even if they don't succeed, if you've made enough money from them, it doesn't matter. So it's kind of it's got lots going on in it, and it's got this lovely, beautiful art style which is just so inviting and fun. Yeah, at the complex end of what I would say for people who aren't necessarily gamers, but so good. And look at this tiny little box. If you have any kind of passing acquaintance with kind of modern board games, you would know about Ticket to Ride. As an entry level, particularly for people who've got relatively short attention spans, this is what I would suggest as a kind of introduction to the series. Ticket to Ride London, 20 minutes, 4 to 6 players. Not 4 to 6 players, 2 to 4 players. It's just really fun. I mean, quite cutthroat. You have to really start thinking about your end game from the very beginning. But once you've played it a few times, you will get into it, and just such a good game. I really love it. And at all the 2, 3, and 4 players, just zips by. And it's London. London's lovely. I love London. Now, obviously, we are where we are as a nation and as a world in this global viral situation, and so I'm talking about board games. There is, I'm afraid, an elephant in the room. I'm going to talk about that elephant in the room. That is, of course, pandemic. Now, it would be a bit gauche of me to sort of make a funny link between this game and the current global situation, but the slightly unfortunate but also true statement is that this is probably the greatest board game ever made, and is fairly accessible and is cooperative and completely brilliant. And I know it's a serious situation, but playing this game is probably oddly appropriate because you are trying to save the world and you are trying to stave off infection, as we all are at the moment. So I am going to mention it. I am going to talk about the elephant in the room, which is pandemic, because I mean, it's not necessarily my favourite game, but I would concur that it's one of the greatest games ever invented. If you don't think that's something you want to go to at this point, the same designer also did a very good game called Forbidden Island, which is somewhat simpler, and some people who know a lot about games, and also Dan Hughes, think that it is better than Pandemic. He's wrong, but we can allow him to have a view. I'm going to talk probably stop talking now because I've been talking for 10 minutes. But I think I'll probably do another one at some point about how to play games with people who are self-isolating, because all of these games require you to be around a table with someone, and if you're not actually allowed within 2 meters of them, that requires a slightly different approach. The final thing I want to say is if you don't fancy board games and you want to try something else, but you do want to play something around a table, it's probably worth considering tabletop role-playing games. Now, I think if you've never played one of those before, please, for goodness sake, don't invest any money in them, because there are things that you can download for free. I'm going to put a link to a very good article with various different options that you can just download and print out, just to see if the whole idea of tabletop role-playing either excites you or sends you running for the hills because it's so excruciatingly embarrassing. It really is a question of individual preference and temperament. There's that article, and then also I'll send a link. I'll put up a link to the Root role-playing game, which has been on Kickstarter. But the point I would make about it is that there is a very nice, very fun quick start, which is free to download. And I will check that it's still free to download and still there. But if not, I can post a link to the files. And it's just really fun if you want to be woodland creatures trapped in a kind of metaphor for the Russian Revolution in a forest. If that sounds not weird, well, then you are weirder than me, but if it sounds weird but appealing, do have a look at that. So if there are any feedback or questions or about, whatever, viruses or families or whatever, I'm still just about a doctor, and can answer any questions, but also about games and play and families and stuff. So anyway, that's enough for me. Bye bye.